So as Unitarian Universalists, what's puzzling to us is often the nature of the game. The Stones had it right. What are we talking about when we say evil? In April of 2007, one of my journalists that I go back to over and over again, David Brooks, wrote an article for the New York Times. It was called Obama, Gospel and Verse. And in it he writes, yesterday evening I was interviewing Barack Obama and we were talking about effective foreign aid programs in Africa. And he says about the president, his voice was measured and fatigued and he was taking those little pauses, you know, that politicians do when they're trying not to get in trouble. And so out of the blue, Brooks asked him, have you ever read Reinhold Niebuhr? And Obama's tone just totally changed, and he said, I love him. He's one of my favorite philosophers. And many of you, whether you know it or not, have heard something Niebuhr wrote, which is the Serenity Prayer. That's his. So that's in a capsule, a lot of Niebuhr's approach. And so Obama said, he's one of my favorite philosophers. And Brooks said, so what do you take away from him? What do you take away from his bigger writings? I take away, Obama answered in a rush of words, the compelling idea that there's serious evil in the world and hardship and pain, and we should be humble and modest in our belief that we can eliminate those things, but we shouldn't use that as an excuse for cynicism and inaction. I take away the sense we have to make these efforts knowing they're hard, and not swinging from naive idealism to bitter realism. You know, right now, sitting here today in these seats, we have folks who identify as you and you. We have humanists and Wiccans and pagans and Buddhists, Christians, Jews, atheists. We've all seen ideas of what evil is supposed to look like, and a lot of them get wrapped up in this whole idea of the Christian devil that gets dumped all over our culture. Others of us have some theological ideas about what an epitome of evil should look like. Some of us think Hitler. Some of us think of the red guy with horns and a tail, Mephistopheles or Old Nick or Satan. Kids' cartoons show us what evil looks like. You see those cartoons with an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other, and the human is caught right in between, and here, the devil made me do it. We see Satan on everything from album covers to marketing for deviled ham. It's amazing. Pop culture has this image of those wild opposites that both Obama and Niebuhr reference. Either on one shoulder you have some idyllic harp-playing, Pollyanna-ish, it's all good. And on the other shoulder you have this depraved, utterly useless, steeped in sin, horned figure. But outside of horror movies, Satan just isn't a boogeyman because our ideas about the nature of evil have changed over 300 years. We get the idea there's more to it. In an article by Carrie Dunn, the museum curator, Bernard Berriite told the website Co-Design, look at TV shows and movies. There's a natural human curiosity about horror. Early depictions of evil showed something that looked like an animal. And I'm sure most of you have seen old woodcuts with hairy legs and big horns. But as the centuries go on, artists start rendering the personification of evil as, well, one of us. By the 21st century, Satan had moved to movies and TVs. And yeah, evil looked human. The devil didn't make me do it. I just let the devil take the blame. Theologically, humans had become the source. If our concept of evil has changed to something beyond a made-up monster, It brings us back to the stone's question. What's the nature of the game? Has evil itself changed? Is there anything called evil, and what's our obligation? How do we react to it? Our roots come partially from Christian Universalists who, as Jude wrote, we don't believe in original sin. We weren't born somehow broken. We had every hope from birth of being the angel on the shoulder. So if evil can't be defined as acting against the will of some kind of God, where do we go with that? And that's where I turned to Reinhold Niebuhr. Their view of original sin was presented in that reading this morning, and I think it's a fine one to poke at because it has nothing to do with the divine. Humanity's capacity for justice makes democracy possible. Humanity's inclination to injustice makes democracy necessary. That is an absolutely stunning encapsulation, absolutely stunning, of human nature. Somebody finally said it. We don't need the angel and the devil on our shoulders. It's all right here. We're the good, we're the bad. We have the capacity to be either. We are where the falling angel meets the rising ape. They're both there. So how do we decide which is which? Well, evil is anything that takes delight in the knowing destruction of another. Evil is the desire to cause an increase in the brokenness of the world purely for the sake of doing so. Here's the catch. Evil is deliberate. Evil is relational. Evil devalues people. To quote my favorite writer, Terry Pratchett, evil begins when you treat people as things. Aristotle said that ethical knowledge is not some kind of theoretical idea. For a person to become virtuous, you can't simply study what virtue is. You have to actually go do virtuous things. He writes, we're not studying in order to know virtue, but to become good, for otherwise there would be no profit in it. Virtue's a habit. You work at being good because it lets you live more richly. You're not doing it because something out there or up there wants you to be more like it. You're already like anything that is perfection. Deeds, not creeds. Living well, living ethically, that is virtue. Each and every one of us has been in the presence of evil over the course of our lives. It's that voice whispering in your ear that says, go ahead and do it. No one will ever know. It's fed on hatred, founded on fear, thrives when we are told or we tell ourselves over and over again, we will not be enough. But people aren't born evil or wicked. People are born human. Wicked comes when people throw away the joy of living well for the quick return of some type of perceived reward. Evil takes what it doesn't deserve. And more than that, it's happy that someone else lost out. We don't want to swing between the angelic and the debased. We go back to Obama's words and we find hope. There's serious evil, hardship, pain, but we have to be humble and modest in our belief we can eliminate these things. Shouldn't use it as an excuse for cynicism and inaction. Make the efforts knowing they're hard, but don't swing between idealism and bitter realism. We want to be the human in the middle. In The Nature of Evil, literary critic Terry Eagleton says, the wicked are those who haven't developed the knack of fine living. Those who botch the business, as you might make a mess of cooking an omelet. The wicked then are inept, deficient people who never really got the hang of human existence. They're like poor artists who can't knock themselves into shape. They're painting their lives wrong. The good, the virtuous, are like good artists. They realize their powers and energies and capacities to the full in as diverse a way as possible. They're brimming with life and spirits. With this model, to ask why be good, as people began to later, is as ridiculous as asking, why enjoy a dark, foaming, full-bodied pint of Guinness? Or why should a clock keep the right time? Virtue, he writes, is a kind of energy or exuberance. It's energy which allows us to live freely and flourish. So for Eagleton, and this is a quote, to be entirely without such abundant, self-delighting life is to be evil. And this means that evil is not something positive, but a kind of a lack. It's a defect in living. A sort of nothingness or negativity and an inability to be truly alive. And evil may look lively or seductive or flamboyant, but it's just the flashy show it puts on to cover up its hollow heart. It's the paper thinness of evil, its brittle unreality, which is most striking about it. For me, it's sort of like eating the food that they make for food commercials that's covered in shoe polish and toothpicks to hold it right. It looks great, but boy, you don't want to eat it. When Mick Jagger and the Stones tells you that what's puzzling you is the nature of the game, they're speaking the truth. Evil lies and deceives, tells you that that appearance is all that matters. Evil tells you that having the creed is more important than doing the deeds, that you don't have to live it as long as you believe it. Doesn't matter how you get there as long as you get results. Evil says it's a zero-sum game and that in order for you to win, everybody else has to lose. When the song says, "Hope you guess my name," it reminds us that evil assures us that it is never our own name we will guess. Evil tells us we're never the bad guy, right? What do we owe the devil? What do we owe the person who delights in doing evil? All people have worth and value, but not all actions or beliefs are worthy or valuable. Some are destructive and vicious and merciless and cruel. People are not evil, but their behaviors may be quite so. What do we owe them? Well, sympathy. Because they have lost the finest and the deepest and the best life has to offer and traded it off for a shallow simulation. But after we sympathize, then what? Well, we just renounce evil. We identify it, we call it by its name. We don't pretend it's okay. We find the hope that exists in being in that middle ground. We refuse to believe a lie that says we're not enough, and we kindle a light each time evil brings darkness. We don't let the darkness overcome it. We don't swing between being the angel and being the demon. We remember that we are the human in between with all the good and bad that goes with that. And we keep moving forward because that's who we are as humans. We remember humility and democracy, modesty and hope. These are the tools of humanity. So kindle a light and have a little sympathy for the devil. Avoid Niebuhr's extremes and look for that place of mindfulness, halfway between that rising ape and that falling angel. Be free and flourish and know that that is good. Blessed be.